And the chamomile person, in a simple telling of it, relives the dramas of their day twice. So they live it in the first time when it's happening to them, and in the second time when they're retelling it to everybody.
That was Sally Kingsford-Smith, a Sydney-based herbalist who was sharing just there the chamomile person picture from the Dorothy Hall tradition. Sally is Dorothy Hall trained, and this is her great passion in life currently, continuing Dorothy's legacy for all current and future herbalists. Sally's also a Reiki master, and she's happiest when combining her love of people, plants, and tissue salts in her practice. You can learn person pictures from Dorothy Hall's work from Sally via her online course that she teaches twice a year. And Sally is now stepping into her crone years and discovering what it means to be an elder in the herb space. And I absolutely love the way she does this. She's gentle, warm, wise, and encouraging. And I had the absolute pleasure of meeting her recently at the Wise Women Gathering, which happens once a year just north of Sydney. She's regularly presented there, and Twiggy and I and Sally got to sit in a panel with a few other people and talk about the power of herbal medicine. This interview is all about the small moments, the simplicity and the gentleness and the presence that plants can give us, which is also sacred. We speak about a number of herbs and their particular uses and person pictures, chamomile, thyme, and more. And my favourite part of the interview is right at the very end, when I asked Sally what she thinks would change if our society embraced herbal medicine as the dominant healing modality. Her excitement, her enthusiasm are absolutely delightful. Enjoy and have a beautiful full moon. Hello, and welcome to Sacred Herbalism, the full moon segment of the Elder Tree podcast, where we explore how plants can support us to enter into a sacred relationship with life and the living world. I'm Stephanie Hazel, and I've recorded this episode beneath the gaze of epic Wollumben, where I live in Bundjalung country, and I pay my respects to the First Nations people of this land, as well as to the spirits and plants of this ancient earth. If you love what we do, you can support the Elder Tree mission of putting medicine in the hands of the people by joining our Patreon, where you can access special teachings from our presenters and our interviewees. So, let's walk into the moonlit forest together. Are you ready? Good morning, Sally. Lovely to have you here. You're in Sydney right now, I believe.
I am in Sydney, Stephanie. It's so lovely to be here with you, sweetie. Thank you for inviting me. Very thrilled.
So I know that the topic of sacred herbalism is not, your go-to, but I would love to hear what sacred herbalism means to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I know what sacred means, but I actually went and looked it up. So sacred with that uppercase S is attached to a specific way of thinking, higher ideals, a specific ritual that you might set aside, or a specific practice that you use. And then there's sacred with the lowercase s, which is the everyday. And that's, I think, how I relate more to it. It's that way that what is in a plant, or particularly in a herb, that makes it so special is an everyday thing to enjoy, not necessarily something that I make part of a ritual. Although I do have a ritual of going out in the garden in the morning and saying hello to plants. I have my favourites. I in my garden with what I'm growing. So I've got a very suburban garden, not far from a main road. So I don't grow a lot of medicinal herbs, and particularly my front garden gets the most sun. In the back, there's not a lot that I can grow because it's facing south. It's only small, but my dandelion is always a huge source of joy for me. The dandelion flowers, they're always so happy. And I think that's something that I can encourage people to have a relationship with too, is looking for the joy in small moments when you're living in a suburban, concreted landscape. is to find those little pops of dandelion coming up between the cracks and reminding us of, even if you don't hear the message of resilience, your subconscious mind, I think, takes it on. But it's that everyday relationship for me, that recognition of all that they bring to the world and that they share with us, and the healing that encompasses, and how vastly they can affect our whole well-being. That to me is sacred, truly, truly sacred. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a mystery and such a wonder to me that plants, there are these little plant beings that grow that create this medicine that is so powerful for our mental well-being. It can affect our mind states, our mood, our digestion, our livers. Like every aspect of our body can be affected by these little beings. And yeah, I feel like that reality in of itself is like the most sacred thing.
Totally. There's a quote. So Dorothy Hall was my teacher, and I practice Dorothy's way. I teach her work. I have immense respect for her knowledge, and there's a quote from one of her books which I really love. Can I read that? So it's about yarrow, and she says, yarrow seems to me to typify the silent strength possessed by herbs in the healing of many ills, pulling the warmth of the sun and the welcome rain down into the soil to change by nature's alchemy into natural minerals, vitamins and oils in the service of man. And I just think that's so beautiful. That's how I feel with all plants, and yarrow is the most beautiful example. Well, not the most beautiful. There are lots of beautiful examples, but it's a beautiful example of it in the way that it works.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Sally, tell me something like, what do you love about being a herbalist? What just delights you in the world of herbal medicine?
What delights me? So I really love plants. Sounds like I said plants. I really love plants. I also really love people, and so connecting the two of them together, seeing the changes that a few drops of herbal medicine can make to somebody's well-being and their enjoyment of life is just such a gift. Um, I think a lot in pictures, and so for me, working with herbs, particularly learning Dorothy's way, I can connect the picture if I have a herb with the picture I get if somebody as I'm talking with them. And it is often you're going by symptoms and things like that, but it's when somebody is speaking to you and the things they're saying and the way they're saying them, and I'll get this picture in my mind, and then I'll think of a herb that relates to that person. And there'll be herbs that suit symptoms as well, but it's often I'm doing a lot with my hands, which you can't see, so that doesn't help. But it's this beautiful marriage of the two together. And then when I get that right, and I don't always get it right, but when I get it right and somebody comes back after 3 or 4 weeks and they can't believe that, a woman I was seeing on Saturday, she was shocked because her period pain was so much less. Diagnosis of suspected endometriosis, but not proven with any investigation. And her pain, she said, had dropped down to 8 out of 10 from 10 out of 10. And to me, that wasn't a lot, but she kept on saying, I'm so shocked. I'm so shocked. I've never had so little pain. Never had so little pain. I'm so shocked. And I wasn't even sure whether I was going to be getting it for her with the herbs that I was using, and to have that difference. And she hadn't been doing a lot of the other things I'd asked her to do. It was just the herbs.
What herbs did you give her?
So there was chamomile, chase tree, and I really can't remember what else. She's very much a chamomile person.
And what is a chamomile person like to you?
So the chamomile person is one of Dorothy's person picture herbs, and it's one I relate to a lot. And the chamomile person, in a simple telling of it, relives the dramas of their day twice. So they live it in the first time when it's happening to them, and then the second time when they're retelling it to everybody. Chamomile's also really suited to Taurians, and she's Taurian, her sun sign. So the chamomile person, they retell what's going on. They, if they're negative, so person pictures, Dorothy's way of doing it will have a, earbud's about to leap out again. The chamomile person will have, or all person pictures, there'll be a positive and a negative of them. So the negative chamomile will really dramatise everything that's happened to them through the day, and they'll get lots of period or cramping conditions. So a lot of, and cramping's in organs more than muscles, so stomach cramps and menstrual cramping. And their retelling of things will be in a very highly dramatic way, whereas the positive chamomile will still know that they need to relax if they're eating a meal, that their digestion won't work if there's lots of stress or disturbances going on and they need to be relaxed. And they will retell what's going on. They come back from the supermarket. When I'm teaching, I was teaching it last night, and I give myself as an example. You get back from the supermarket and you don't dramatise, but you'll say, oh, yeah, and I bumped into so-and-so and she said this, and then I couldn't get a park in the car park and I had to go around 3 times. And I will tell it all. My husband doesn't give 2 hoots. So I've learned not to say so much when I get home with him, but when my daughters were at home, I'd get home and tell them everything that was going on, and it was so inconsequential. It wasn't really worth retelling, but I did it anyway. So, and I'm very much a positive chamomile. That's a real chamomile. And the chamomile person often has a bloated, round tummy, like the centre of a chamomile flower, that protruding little belly. And that was very much me as well, still now, but very much as a kid.
Yeah. I definitely like to tell my partner every single thing that happened since the last time I saw him. And as you said, most of those things are totally inconsequential. Yeah. Chamomile is one of those herbs that I actually had regularly as a child. Like we didn't have a lot of herbal medicine particularly, but chamomile tea and peppermint tea, I get that they're fairly common, but I'm pretty sure I drank them nearly every single day of my childhood. Peppermint tea at bedtime, chamomile tea, like either at breakfast, which is an interesting choice, or in the afternoon after school. Chamomile tea with honey.
Beautiful. That's there. After school is when, after school is a beautiful time for kids to have it. And it is a real children's herb.
I definitely feel that when we work with plants as these kind of, like as Dorothy Hall does, and I think Matthew Wood does that as well, like when we work with plants and trying to pull out their specific indications and kind of the essence or the signature or the personality of the plants as living beings, I feel like we do engage with what we could call sacred herbalism more fully, right? We actually start to see the plants as having like that innate personality and spirit, as opposed to just being like, oh, well, it has these constituents and these chemicals. And so we know that chemical X is an anti-inflammatory and chemical B is a, muscle relaxant. So therefore, it becomes more alive and animate and invitational, I think, herbalism.
Oh, totally. And that's how you practice too, isn't it?
Yeah, more and more. It, it's taken me a lot of confidence and time to be brave enough to practice like that, because it's not how we're taught currently.
No.
Definitely not how I was taught. And it's not the kind of language or approach that gets us a lot of traction or recognition from the authorities, right? Or even just the public. Like I think if you can add a sprinkling of semi-understood scientific terms into a blog about plants, it's almost automatic whether people want it to or not. It adds authority and credence to what you're saying. But actually, I think for most herbalists, for me anyway, it's been a slow process of reclaiming my personal relationship with plants and being brave enough to be like, yeah, like all that scientific information is interesting, but it doesn't usually help me get better clinical outcomes. And what I found is that as much as I really enjoyed studying biochemistry and all those things at uni, and I was very good at science as a kid. I'm a very kind of scientifically brained person. Maths and physics and were really my jam, you know. It's not like I don't understand it, but it's just that I don't actually find most of that information very clinically useful. And the more that I've reclaimed a kind of slower, single herb use, matching people to the feeling of a plant, the better clinical outcomes I have.
That's wonderful. I still haven't got down to the single herb. Um, I don't know whether I'm influenced by Dorothy, who reckon you don't get that down to that till many decades in practice. So I still haven't got to that. But yeah, I definitely can't think in biochemical pathways. When people come to see you, that it's not a bag of biochemical pathways that's coming in and sitting in your clinic with you. It's not the example I often give, it's not a cranky uterus or a stuck up bowel that's coming to sit with you. It's a person. And the same as the plant just isn't these, I'm doing hand gestures again. The plant isn't just this bag of active constituents. When I first started studying herbalism back in the 80s, I studied with a different teacher, and we were taught very much to poo-poo Dorothy's way of working. There was this very dismissive hand gesture of, oh, you don't get enough of the active constituents, you know, and those drop dose herbs, they're rubbish. They're not going to work. And then when I met my neighbour's child, who was she was a patient of one of Dorothy's graduates, and I saw this child and I realised that the way I'd been taught to use herbs would have knocked her on her feet. And I could see that what this herbalist was doing with her was wonderful. It's very arrogant. When I first heard that they were seeing a Dorothy graduate, I was, those people, they're wasting their money. You know, that's not going to help her. And then I met this child and I saw how frail she was and the situation she was in, and I saw how much this guy was helping her, and it just complete conversion for me.
Yeah, wow. I think
So then when it started with her.
I find that thing with drop dosing as well, like that because I was taught, 200 ml bottles of tinctures for like 10 days or a week, right? If you put 5 herbs in and every herb you're dosing at 2-3 mils a day, even 5 mils a day, then you end up, it's very expensive and it uses a lot of herb material. And Matthew Wood, who's
It
a great,
is.
a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
inspiration of mine, he uses like 1 to 5 drops. And I've loved his work, but haven't been brave enough to prescribe that clinically because of this deep, you know, mistrust because of the education that I've had. And when you're told by your teachers multiple times that there's just not enough herb in there to do anything, right? It's hard to go against that. I think I actually was sharing this story with you at Wise Women's Gathering. I have been teaching the Plant Allies course where people are taking herbs blind for a week before sharing their experiences.
Yes.
And I started off doing 1 mil 3 times a day, which is still on the low end of the kind of standard dosing regime. And then maybe the third time I taught the course, I was like, just see what happens with a drop dosage. And I got people to take 5 drops 3 times a day. So 5 drops is 1/6 of a mil. And I was then get people to do the first half of the week 5 drops 3 times a day, and the second half of the week 1 mil 3 times a day. And it's been so interesting in this kind of blind clinical trial, essentially, where people are taking a herb, not knowing what it is, just taking notes and then sharing their experience to see the difference in the 5 drops and the 30 drops. And it's not everyone, but definitely it's more than half of the people have a stronger response on the 5 drops than on the 30 drops. And my brain can't quite understand that. So there are a lot of people that have a stronger response to the herb on 5 drop doses than on 1 mil dose.
That's phenomenal. And that's with all the different herbs that you're working with?
I mean, there's definitely a difference. There are some herbs I find the more tonic herbs. I recently did a nettle, 2 weeks with nettle, and I definitely found that nettle seemed to be people were responding better on the larger dose.
Mm.
But a lot of the herbs, like passion flower, which is a herb that I remember one of my lecturers at uni saying, sometimes 5 mils of herb doesn't quite cut it. If I'm feeling really stressed, I go and have 20 mils of passion flower tincture. And I raised my hand and I was like, yes, well, that's basically a shot of vodka. That will chill anyone out. Like the alcohol content of 20 mils, she didn't like that comment very much. And interestingly, one group I had a couple of very experienced herbalists who've been in practice for 10, 20 years. And one herbalist was like, oh, what is this herb? I love it. It's amazing. I feel so good. I'm sleeping so well. I feel so clear and calm, but really productive. And then when we were all sharing, I was like, well, it's passion flower. And she's like, oh, wow, I've always hated passion flower and written it off, just as like an insomnia herb. And she said, I've always taken it and prescribed it in 5 ml doses at bedtime. And it always interfered with my sleep. I've slept worse having 5 mils of passion flower. But when she was having 5 drops of passion flower, she was sleeping like a baby and having it throughout the day because it was working on a different level, I suppose, right? And that blew my mind and gave me more of that, again, more confidence to actually use drop dosing in practice.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I love it.
And again, to just loop back to the sacred herbalism conversation, there's something mysterious and mystical and magical about the fact that 5 drops of tincture, which scientifically speaking does not have enough active constituents to affect the body, can have a deeper, stronger healing effect. And this woman she is, I'd say, 50. She's quite a large woman. She's not like a frail child, right? You would look at her and think, oh yeah, large doses, you'll be fine. And that 5 drops was so supportive.
Yeah, it speaks right to her as a person rather than just that physical aspect. I know every so often I've tried 5 mils of something for sleep, and it just, no, sleep and anxiety. It was 5 mils of magnolia I think I was trying for a while because somebody said how great it was and I was having troublesome sleep. No, did nothing. I don't often go down as low as 5 drops. I'll typically go 10 to 20 drops 3 times a day of a mix that's got five different herbs in it perhaps. But I know Dorothy was 10 drops, and all the drop dosing people in the group I belong to, Estria Learning, they're nearly all, if they're drop doses, they'll be doing 10 drops. I don't know how I switched to 20. It was
Is that a formula?
formulas, yeah, a mixture of herbs. So maybe 5 herbs in the formula.
Yeah, so maybe I guess the 5 drops as
5
a single.
yes, as a single. But, yeah, for me, 5 drops of valerian now is what's made my sleep amazing. Best it's been in decades. That and not sleeping with a snoring husband.
Your own bed. Yeah. I've definitely moved into the spare room during this pregnancy because of just the discomfort and needing to shift around, and my partner's a real snuggler, which I normally love, but when I just am needing to like change sides every hour, it's not very comfortable. Someone's like holding on to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is something to be said for sleeping.
Yeah, pregnancy sleep's different altogether.
Yeah, so valerian,
yeah, valerian's beautiful for me. After trying lots of different things, valerian.
And why do you think you have that resonance with valerian?
That's a good question. I put it off for a long time. With Dorothy's person picture, the valerian person is very much keeping everything under control. And so a valerian person, you would say in a consultation with a valerian person that you need Dorothy said you need your curiosity claws out to get information from them. I almost feel like I need a grappling hook sometimes. The valerian person, you might ask, and tell me about your bowel movements. Oh, they're perfectly fine, thank you. They'll say with this very sort of stiff upper lip, perfectly fine, thank you. Oh, well, how often do you have a bowel movement? And one of Dorothy's stories that she told was, oh, well, once a week, said this woman. And once a week I manually extract the feces But no, everything's perfectly fine. So I haven't had that story. But the Valerian person will tell you that everything is perfectly fine. And then at the end of the consult, you think, well, everything's so fine. What are you doing coming to see me? Was what you want to say, but I don't. Um, and so I pop some valerian in the herbs, and then the next time you get the story of why they're really coming to see you. But they don't give anything away. So I don't know. I know I'm a real chamomile person. I did chamomile for ages. I've tried other herbs, which used to work for me, and they stopped working so well. So I love mugwort in drop doses for sleep. Tiny little drop doses of mugwort is beautiful for sleep.
What was sleep?
Yeah, but really tiny doses of it, and St John's wort as well. Um, but it's got to be the right person.
I don't think of what for sleep.
Yeah, it's got to be with the right person. So I'm not sure why valerian's working for me, except it's a good herb for Taurians, and I'm a Taurian. So, but it's working.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something like I've been thinking a bit lately. I did a bit of systems thinking and systems theory study and work when I was working in public health at NGOs, looking at like systems approaches to public health care. And I've been thinking recently about how we apply systems thinking to herbal medicine. I mean, systems thinking really is just like a modern fancy way of saying looking at the way nature works and applying those principles to our lives as humans, right? And I've been thinking a lot, it's a lot about context. I've been thinking about that interaction, that the medicine is not just like an inert property in the plant that we consume, but the medicine is like an interaction
Mm,
between the person, like the person taking the plant and the medicine, which I think is a good way of thinking about the person picture, right? So when the person taking the plant has that right fit for that
mm,
plant's kind of personality, you get a much deeper medicine. But also, I've been adding a third element in there as well, which is like the environment or the context that that person exists in. And so there are definitely herbs like, I think motherwort's a really good example. I've been working with motherwort a bit lately, um, inspired by wonderful Tatiana Dawn
mm,
and her love of motherwort. I've been getting more interested in motherwort. And there definitely is a person picture for motherwort, but there's also particular circumstances where someone who's not a motherwort person, for example,
mm,
postpartum, or that they might not be a motherwort person their whole life and hit menopause and suddenly become a motherwort person because we aren't static.
mm.
So I think that I've been, and this is hard, I'm only starting to go down this road of analysis, but I've been thinking about, okay, what's the personality of this person and what herbs do I know that fit that? But also, what's the context that they're experiencing right now? And so I can imagine that someone might have a Valerian context where at work they've got to keep everything under control and there's all this pressure, or a version of that isn't who they are as a being,
Mm.
but is who their life is like requiring them to be. And then that plant will still have that potential for healing for them.
I, yeah, I've never thought it. I'm not familiar with systems thinking, but definitely there's circumstances. You need to look at people in their circumstances as well. In our life stages, yeah, we change all the time. The herb that I've really noticed that with is Hypericum, St John's wort, and I often find women going through menopause, their sleep will become disturbed because they become so much more sensitive to external stimuli like street lights and sounds, and the slightest sound will wake up somebody who used to sleep through that. And I find Hypericum is beautiful with that sort of situation. So yeah, definitely our life stages and our circumstances alter things. I find, to going into a slightly different direction, I think I mentioned at Wise Women Gathering the concept that I've been working with more lately, which is encouraging, something I learned from an American herbalist, Robin Rose Bennett, that she talked about, and that's when people are taking their herbs, encouraging them to think about, instead of taking the herbs, that they're receiving them. And that's such a beautiful change in the exchange between the person and the herb, and it gives it a whole different relationship. And And so the herb seems to land more deeply into their very being as they have that appreciation. I was listening to your very first podcast episode for this show, and you were talking about sitting and drinking that mug of tea and thinking about all the little plant beings that were in it. And it brings people to that sort of concept and way of thinking. This is not just a commodity for them. I think once you reduce herbs down to that commodification and reduce it to the active constituents, you almost do need more, because you're not allowing that sacred energy work to happen. It's like you stick a heavy blanket over it and you push it to one side and you go, no, we shan't allow that in here. And when you welcome that in, it's a lot more potent and can be the ripples from it can spread much further and wider.
Yeah, I really love that. Thank you for reminding me of that. It landed powerfully when you shared that at Wise Women's Gathering, about just that subtle shift of orientation when we use receive rather than take. And I completely forgot about it. So hearing that again, I really want to bring that into the way that I speak about it. Our words have power, and that receiving is something much more relational, much more sacred, much more gratitude automatically into that exchange.
I'm not remembering to do it with every patient, and not every patient necessarily lets me know they've responded, but some people have really, it shifted their whole attitude, and the results that I'm seeing are quite remarkable. Yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, that was pretty sure it was Robin Rose Bennett.
Robin Rose Bennett. I don't know her actually.
Yeah, she's got some beautiful books.
I think that brings deep in my heart, there is this feeling that herbalism is more than just a way to keep people healthy, right? And I think that in our daily practice of herbalism, it's easy to focus on that as what's in front of us. Someone comes in, a client I had last week, she's in her 70s, she's got arteriosclerosis, getting memory lapses, wanting some support with herbs, hoping to not have to go down all the pharmaceutical realms, and very much, okay, how do I help this woman to feel better in her body and in her brain, right? But it kind of feels to me, in the age that we're in, where we're in a time of crises in so many ways, that herbalism can also be, or the plant path, or, herbal medicine can be a way of reorienting the human-earth relationship towards one that brings better health and harmony to the ecosystems, ideally, and also like the mental well-being, the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of humans, which I think is also in a real crisis point. Like, many people are very depressed and isolated and anxious and living inside a very unpleasant internal landscape. And I feel like when we say, when you invite your clients to receive the medicine, it's actually inviting them to shift that relationship and that orientation of like, oh yeah, I'm in relationship with a ultimately like quite benevolent earth that actually provides for my needs in this powerful and mystical way, And there's a real healing, I think. I think the healing of that for the right person can be profound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I've got anything to add to that because you said it so beautifully. But it does, bringing people back to that awareness that nature is giving us so much, and it just happens. The plants are just doing it. Nature is doing it. And to have that relationship, I find one of the things that I do a lot, as well as that, is to deepen somebody's relationship. Is as they're leaving along my practices at home, and along my front fence, I have a lot of holy basil or tulsi, people sometimes say, growing, and often I will have a pot of that in the clinic made from the fresh plant, so you can actually see the plant in I have a clear glass teapot, and I'll often do rosemary and tulsi together. And then when people are leaving, I always make sure that I have enough time between clients to give myself space, but also it allows me to walk out into the garden with people as they're going and give them a whole bunch of tulsi or rosemary or both to take home with them. And I never thought of putting plants from the garden in tea. Oh, what can I do with this? And I now have so many tulsi babies, or my plant has so many tulsi babies and grandbabies growing from up north, Newcastle, around Sydney, not a lot further south, but yeah, and spreading that awareness of plants that way as well, and what they can give us, even just to have it growing and to go and talk to it. One of my patients was telling me how her kids now go and talk to the tulsi every day. Because Sally said we could. Sally said to talk to the tulsi, so they go and have conversations with their tulsi plant, and they weren't doing that before. And it's thinking of kids being outside and talking to the plants instead of being inside on devices is much better.
My goodness. Yeah. I laughed when you said that people say, I never thought of putting leaves in tea, plants in tea, when it just seems so ludicrous that we could arrive at a place as a culture, as a global
Yeah,
Western culture, that we have that we can get to that place where we have intense disconnection of like,
yeah,
well, do you make tea? You're always putting plants in your tea. That's
yeah.
what tea is.
Yes, but it's coming straight from the garden.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think that making garden tea is probably the most healing tea there is, even if all you have in your
Yes.
garden is like parsley and calendula flowers, or
Or
parsley and rose petals,
dandelion.
dandelion. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I have a friend who has very bad arthritis and a whole heap of huge health issues. And some years ago, I gave her gotcha cola, and it escaped out of the pot and into the garden. And she was complaining recently about a weed that was growing in the front, and she was ripping it out. And I had a look, and it was the gotcha cola. I said, "That's the gotcha cola I gave you. You should be using that." And she loves growing sorrel, and she's Russian in background, and sorrel is very part of her culture. So she gives me bunches of sorrel. But she looked at this gotcha cola and she said, "I'm not eating that. It's a weed. I couldn't possibly eat that." Oh, oh, my heart hurt. It's once again I'm touching my hand to my heart because it hurts so deeply that she looked at it like that. And there's no amount of persuading that I can do to get her to start using it internally. She's just ripping it all out. Wherever it pops up its little head, out it gets yanked because it's a weed. It's spread. How dare it
Oh,
spread from
wow.
the confines of its pot.
Probably knew how much you needed it.
So yeah,
We'll go everywhere for you.
indeed. Yes, yes. Look at me. I hadn't thought of that. I'm so generous. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Look at me. Look at me. I want to help you. She's saying, no, get away.
Yeah, and weeds are often the most powerful medicines, right? Because they can thrive in marginalized landscapes, which is where
Yeah,
we generally find ourselves.
yeah. And then I was thinking about her, and sometimes we need our illnesses,
Tell me more about that.
unfortunate as that seems. Sometimes I've had people coming to me who are coming because they've been advised they need to see a naturopath or a herbalist, or a friend has said, "I saw Sally, you should really see her," and they're not really keen to. And no matter what I do, I seem to get resistance from them. They don't take their herbs, they don't receive their herbs. I didn't know about the word receiving when I was working with people like this. And there's a lot of reluctance, and it's as if, and I rarely get people like that these days. Um, I'm much better attracting people that are my aligned people that I enjoy working with. But they need to hold on to illness. Either it's still teaching them a lesson, or it's justifying some reason for them not enjoying life. I don't know, maybe it's an unworthiness. I'm just seeing this as you ask the question. maybe it's an unworthiness. Self-sabotage is a very popular term. So maybe it's a self-sabotage for whatever reason. It's not something I've given a great deal of thought to for a long number of years. I used to look into it. But yes, sometimes we need our illness. This woman is single and doesn't have the family support she would like. Things have changed for her now, though. But yeah, don't know. Maybe that's just her as an example. But there are people that need their illnesses. It's like a crutch to make excuses, to not grow and move on. Yeah, and not allow that growth that they're capable of. That's their birthright. You shove it all away because it's challenging and hold on to the illness instead. I guess it could be a bit of a life raft.
And also, especially for like serious or chronic illnesses, often changing healing from a chronic illness is rarely just taking a herb or a medication, as much as we might like that to be true. It's often actually a real shift in the way that we live our lives in order to have the healing that we want. And that's the hardest thing. I find that in clinic,
Yeah,
and a friend and one of my clinical mentors, Jimmy Willumben, told me once, when someone spent 20 years eating, drinking, moving, choosing their way into their illness, they need to spend, a little time moving, choosing, eating, and drinking their way out.
yeah, beautifully put. Another thought is that if lonely people in particular, if you have a chronic illness, gives you that connection with your GP and your specialists. So it gives you that reason to go and have contact with people and to have somebody to rely on and to see. So that's another aspect of it as well. But yes, if people have chronic things, they're not going to suddenly stop with one bottle of herbs or 3 bottles of herbs, depending on the size of the bottles. It's changing attitudes and being willing to let go. To look, that's walnut as the flower essence is beautiful with that. It's the link breaker, and so that can help. It still won't happen overnight, but it can help dissolving some of those chains that are holding them in that pattern, if they want to break that pattern.
And they have to want to, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what's a plant that's been showing up, raising its head in your life lately?
Actually, thyme. For the last few years, I find thyme through winter, but particularly today, with hubby bringing home some sort of viral thing, and I can hear it starting to happen to me today. So thyme definitely today.
And what does thyme, tell me about the way you use thyme and think about thyme as a plant.
So thyme, first, I had really overlooked thyme until I had the beautiful good fortune to go to France with Jackie Bushell for a plant spirit retreat. And we were in an area not far from the Pyrenees, in a little gîte in a country village that was up high. And there was a big steep hill. I'm using hand gestures again, which people can't see. There's a big steep hill behind the gîte. The weather was fairly cold. It was a beginning of spring and it was a cold spring. And I would go for a walk up there most days to either we went as the small group that we had, or I would skirtle up there by myself in the morning to sit and meditate. And the wild thyme everywhere was just phenomenal. It's this photo I still use on my screensaver on my laptop. And at the time I was getting over it was a post-viral respiratory thing. I get oh God, what's it called? An irritation in the top part of my so pharyngitis. I'll get pharyngitis after, I was getting pharyngitis after respiratory things, and I'd get tight and wheezy walking fast in the cold air, and just taking a tiny leaf or a flower of that thyme and inhaling that, and I could feel, literally feel my airways open and ease. It was beautiful. So that, and then coming back to our much milder time here, but doing a time spirit connection with Heidi Wed and sitting with time for a few days and hearing the messages that I learnt from time. And I gained a much greater respect from time for those two talks. And so um, it was a few months ago, one of my daughter's flatmates got COVID, and the cough was the worst part of it. And I suggested making some thyme tea, and they didn't have any time. And she'd tried all sorts of health food shop cough medicines, pharmacy cough medicines, and nothing was relieving the cough. And I suggested to them thyme tea, and they didn't have any time, but they did have in the house, they had mixed Italian herbs. And so my daughter made her mixed Italian herbs, and she couldn't get over the relief that that gave her from the coughing. So she was then telling all her work colleagues who'd got the COVID at the same time as her about it and how fabulous it was. So I now see time as the really powerful on a physical aspect, really powerfully opening for the airways, and on a spiritual connection level, it was a lot of it about was resilience, but time was really starting to lose patience with us. The message I was getting was that we were running out of time, TIME time, and that she was this sort of quite a stern sort of elder, grandmothery sort of figure, um, you know, shaking a fist, and you need to wake up and listen and pay attention. And so I pay a lot more attention to her now than I did before. Pay a lot of attention to a lot of the herbs, but I pay a lot more attention to thyme, the herb, THYME. Yeah,
Awesome, thank you. I
yeah.
wish
So,
I could project myself back in time and space to your walks in the French Pyrenees with the wild thyme. That sounds so beautiful.
it was absolutely, yeah, life-changing for me. Really, really beautiful.
I have a cute story about time actually, just from last week, um, with my daughter Ariane, who is currently showing a lot of interest in herbalism, but she's only 2.5, so plenty of time for her to rebel against her mother's profession. um, but it's very cute, and we have a thyme plant in our garden. It doesn't look Thyme doesn't love the subtropics. We've had such a wet, humid winter that it has. It's pottering along in a
Mm,
surprisingly decent way, but it's not thriving. And sometimes I tell her what's in the garden and what a very 2-year-old version of what they're good for. And I told her months ago that thyme was for coughs and for sore throats. You know, I guess nice and short to the point for a little person. And
yep.
that week, this is months ago, that week she was running in the garden. I actually think she might have a little bit of mild asthma. Running in the garden, and I think she actually breathed her saliva and was coughing. So that's not really the indication we would use it for.
Mm,
And so she ran to the veggie garden and she picked some thyme and she ate it. And I was like, "Why are you eating thyme?" She said, "Because I'm coughing," which I was very proud of her. But that was straight after I told her. And then just
oh,
yesterday, no, not yesterday, sorry, on Friday, it was one of my really close friends who has a little girl who just turned 2. They're 9 months apart, and it was her birthday. And we went, and so we made a cake, and we chose a toy that Ariel wanted to give Lilaquai, and she wrapped it up. And then she said, "And I'm going to go to the garden and get some thyme in case Lilaquai has a
oh,
cough." And they had been sick, so I'd been telling her earlier in the week that maybe we'll go for her birthday, maybe we won't because they're sick. So she went and picked a sprig of thyme, and when we were giving the cake and the present, she's like, "Mama, where's the thyme?" And she handed with great solemnity this little sprig of thyme to her 2-year-old friend who'd been sick with a cough.
that's so beautiful. Oh, how special. Yeah, proud mama moment. deeply touching.
Totally proud
Yeah,
mama moment.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm trying to hold in my fantasies of like, she's going to be a herbalist. She's going to be amazing. And it reinforces to me, not like, oh, wow, she's so brilliant, but just how innate it is in humans
yes,
to
yeah,
understand
yeah,
plants in that way and to share plants in that way. And be like, oh, I have
yeah,
this plant that does this, and my friend has this. I'll go visit them with that plant. It's such an old, ancient part of humanity.
yeah, yeah. Very old. How gorgeous. I love that.
I have one last question for you.
Okay.
How do you think our society would change? Mm.
Oh, wow. So much. It's almost too, not too, I don't want to say it's too scary. It's too exciting to think about all the changes that would be possible. Think of how different, I mean, not everybody's going to grow them, but think how different it's going to be going to the supermarket. The experience of how the supermarket would look. Think about all the drug companies that would go bust. Um, Hopefully, thinking that the relationship with the plants would be enhanced and engendered, and the herbs not being reduced to being a commodity, which is happening at the moment. Um, Thinking about drug companies made me think that a lot of companies are hooking onto the popularity, and herbs are getting reduced to a commodity, which is the complete opposite of what we want. We want people to have that personal relationship with the plant and to deepen that connection and to therefore have a greater caring for nature and for our planet, and to have that respect that you and I do, and that so many herbalists and women, people that we know, do have that respect and that reciprocity. So I want that to be part of it, and to have that really ancient knowledge and connection that we have through cellular memory with plants to be reawoken. Oh, it's so exciting thinking about all the possibilities. It'd be like rainbows and unicorns and fairy dust and magical sprinkles everywhere. It's I think it's coming, and there are huge shifts happening um, for those transitions to occur. I think they will occur, but there may be some very big shake-ups along the way first. But it's very exciting. It's like a knowing. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's big, Stephanie. That's a huge, huge, exciting lot of things to contemplate.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sally.
You're welcome. This has been lovely. Thank you so much.
If Sally's discussion of the different plant pictures and how to use them with Dorothy Hall's framing excites and inspires you, then I encourage you to jump onto one of her beautiful online courses. They generally happen about twice a year, and you just need to email her to go on the announcement list. Her emails are only about her upcoming courses, and she's an absolute delight to study with. The address is in the show notes. That's it for this moon cycle. Thanks for joining me in another layer of this fascinating conversation we are having about the role of the sacred in our lives as herbalists. If you know someone who would love this episode, then send it through to them, as our work strengthening our herbal community through grassroots herbal education starts right here. I'll see you next time the moon is round in the sky, and until then, I wish you good health and many plants.